I spent my whole life giving my best. Love, time, money, pieces of myself I never got back. I gave so much of myself that, at times, I forgot who I was outside of being a mother, a provider, someone who slowly became invisible. Until one night, sitting at a table full of food I had prepared with my own hands, I heard something that broke me in two. This isn't just a story about humiliation. It's a story about awakening, about rising from the ashes of a life you gave everything to build. If you've ever felt like a ghost in your own home, erased from your own story, this story is for you. Subscribe now and help us reach 500 subscribers. Together, we're building a space where thousands of women can rise and reclaim their voices. In the comments, tell us where you're watching from and share your story. I want to hear it because your story has the power to change lives. I still feel the weight of that moment, the clinking of crystal glasses I had carefully picked out at a clearance sale years ago, the soft strumming of an acoustic guitar playing in the background of a living room I had decorated with love, every pillow, every picture frame, chosen to make that place feel like home, the smell of the stew I had spent hours seasoning, stirring the pot while balancing client spreadsheets on my phone. I was a freelance accountant, managing the books for small businesses, giving up nights and weekends to make sure the bills got paid, the mortgage stayed current, and Nathan, my son, never had to worry. But that night, all I wanted was for the house to be perfect. Chloe, my daughter-in-law, had forgotten, again, to tell me her parents were coming over for dinner. Just a little get-together, she said, with that casual tone that masked how much she relied on me to keep everything running smoothly. I ran to the store, bought fresh ingredients, cleaned the house until the floors sparkled, and set the table with the special occasion tablecloth I always kept tucked away, all while Chloe posted Instagram stories about gratitude and good vibes. I should have known something was off. I should have noticed how she avoided looking at me, like I was just another piece of furniture, useful but invisible. And then it happened. We were all at the table, Chloe's parents, Nathan, a few of their friends. I was in the kitchen, bringing up a bottle of wine I had gone down to the basement to get, when Chloe's mother, wearing a polite smile and eyes that couldn't quite hide her contempt, asked, "And you are?" There was a second of silence. Then Chloe laughed, a light, cutting laugh, as if it were the funniest thing in the world. "Oh, that's Elaine, our unofficial housekeeper. Keeps everything running smoothly." They all laughed, the entire table. The sound rang in my ears like glass shattering. Even Nathan, my son, laughed. His eyes stayed fixed on his plate, as if he couldn't bear to look at me. I stood there, frozen, holding that bottle of wine. Its weight felt lighter than the ache growing in my chest. I forced a smile, the kind I had mastered when the world hurt too much, and said something about needing to check the oven. I placed the bottle gently on the counter, as if I were setting down my own heart, and walked slowly toward my bedroom. Behind me, they kept laughing, talking, toasting, with the glasses I had washed, in the house I had paid for. No one followed me. No one, not even my son, stood up to say, "That's my mother." No one corrected Chloe, and in that moment, something inside me broke. Not with a crash, but with a silence so deep. That night, after Chloe's cruel laughter, and the others had echoed for the last time, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed. In the room I had painted a soft blue when I first bought the house, A shade I chose because little Nathan once said it looked like the sky. The walls, once a symbol of my achievement, now felt like a cage closing in. I signed the mortgage alone, with my name, my credit, my hard work. Every payment came from long nights balancing small business finances as a freelance accountant, while Nathan slept in the room next door. He had just started college back then. Chloe wasn't in our lives yet. I gave everything, for him, for that home. And now I was the housemaid, a joke in my own house. I had always felt something off with Nathan, something I couldn't name. He was my son, but there was a quiet coldness, a distance I tried to ignore. When he was little, I used to tell him stories about my childhood, how I used to draw, and dreamed of being an artist. But he would roll his eyes, like I didn't matter. He never hugged me unless prompted. Sometimes when I reached out to touch his shoulder, he would flinch, like my affection was unwelcome. I blamed myself. I thought I was a bad mother, that I didn't know how to love him right. But that night, as I stared at the bedroom door, I started to wonder, maybe the problem wasn't me. The next morning, I made coffee out of habit, the bitter smell filling the kitchen I had lovingly organized for years. I fed the cat Chloe pretended to love, the same one she featured in her Instagram stories about positive energy and self-care. When she came downstairs, dressed perfectly in her yoga outfit, eyes glued to her phone, she didn't see me. Not really. I picked up the keys, front door, backyard gate, garage, even the mailbox, and placed them in her hand. "What is this?" she asked, frowning, as if I were interrupting her perfect routine. And I said, "Good luck with the mortgage." My voice calm in a way that didn't feel like mine. I grabbed my purse, the same coat I wore the day I brought Nathan home from the hospital, and walked out. I heard Nathan call my name as I opened the car door, but I didn't stop. I closed the door gently, not in anger, but with a clarity sharp as glass. Something inside me had shifted. It wasn't pain. It wasn't rage. It was silence, the kind that says, "I'm done." I drove to my great-aunt Dorothy's apartment, a small, forgotten place she had left me in her will. The silence there was different, thick, like dust settled on furniture no one had touched in years. The smell of worn floorboards and old wallpaper surrounded me, along with the groan of a heater that seemed as tired as I felt. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, purse still hanging from my shoulder, and whispered a prayer. "God, I don't know what's left of me," I said, barely audible. "Just show me how to be strong. Show me who I am without them." I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I felt stillness, not an answer, but a quiet that held me, urging me to keep going. I dropped my bag and stood there, staring at the cracks in the tile, trying to figure out who I was without the house, without Nathan, without the weight of being everything for everyone. Days later, while searching for a light bulb in the closet, I found a metal chest, heavy, rusted, hidden under boxes of old papers. I opened it with effort, expecting receipts or faded photos. Instead, there were envelopes, dozens of them, yellowed with age. One in particular had my name written on it, in Dorothy's trembling handwriting. "If you're reading this, you've come back, and I'm sorry." My heart pounded. Inside were hospital forms, scribbled notes, and a photo of a newborn wrapped in a blanket. It wasn't Nathan. The name on it was Daniel Harper. Dorothy, who once worked as a hospital administrator, wrote about a chaotic night nearly 30 years ago. A baby mix-up in the nursery. A mistake the hospital covered up. She had tried to report it, but was silenced. Years later, she discovered documents about a secret settlement with the Harper family, who unknowingly adopted Daniel. There was also a faded newspaper clipping. Daniel, now an adult, winning a local award for his community work at a cafe that had become a gathering place for poets and writers. He was a former literature teacher who opened the cafe after losing his job during the pandemic, wanting to create a space where people felt at home. I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking. Nathan wasn't my son. My real son, Daniel, was just a few miles away, living a life I never knew. And then something clicked. Nathan's coldness, that emptiness I had felt, it wasn't my fault. Maybe without realizing it, we had always been strangers. And for the first time, I felt relief. It wasn't just a letter. It was the truth that finally made my life make sense. After finding Dorothy's letter, something inside me started to change. It wasn't a loud transformation, but a slow awakening, like the sun breaking through the fog. The truth about Daniel, my real son, and Nathan, the son I raised, brought an unexpected relief. But it also brought questions. Who was Daniel? What was his life like? And Nathan and Chloe, who had built their happiness at my expense, what was the foundation of their world? I needed to know, so I began to observe. Daniel's cafe was just a few blocks from downtown. A small place with large windows, the smell of roasted coffee, and a hand-painted sign that said, "Welcome." It was more than just a cafe. It was a sanctuary. Daniel, who I learned was a former literature teacher, turned the space into a community hub after losing his job during the pandemic. He organized poetry nights, writing workshops, even a book club for single mothers. I read about him in the newspaper clipping I found in the trunk, but seeing him in person was different. I entered for the first time with my heart in my throat, pretending to read a menu while I watched him. He was tall, with thin-framed glasses, moving with a calmness that felt familiar. He was helping a customer pick out tea, his voice soft, patient, as if every word mattered. I sat in the corner, holding a cup I didn't drink, and I noticed he had my eyes. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Not yet. I came back the next day, and the next, always quietly. It became a ritual. I'd sit with a newspaper or a book, watching Daniel. He greeted everyone by name, laughed with the staff, wrote inspiring phrases on the chalkboard at the entrance. Once, I heard him recite a poem to a group of young people, and my chest tightened. I had wanted to be an artist. Once I had wanted to create, but I gave that up for Nathan. Seeing Daniel there, living something so close to my forgotten dreams, was like finding a piece of me I didn't know still existed. Meanwhile, I kept an eye on Nathan and Chloe from a distance. It wasn't hard. Chloe lived on Instagram, posting about prosperity and self-care, showing off expensive coffees and yoga retreats I knew she couldn't afford. But I knew the truth. As an accountant, I saw the signs: maxed out credit cards, overdue rent, a coaching business that was more smoke than fire. Nathan, a freelancer in digital marketing, barely worked. They posted pictures, smiling at fancy dinners, but I knew they were drowning in debt, maintaining a life that wasn't theirs. At night, in Dorothy's apartment, I wrote, not to publish, but for myself. Old notebooks, the kind I used to buy for Nathan in school, now held my pain. I wrote about the times I waited for a thank you that never came, about the nights I cried in the car after they went out to dinner without inviting me. about how I pretended to sleep so I wouldn't hear Chloe laughing at my favorite shows in the living room I paid for. Every word was a weight lifted off my shoulders. One night, sitting with my notebook, I whispered another prayer. God, help me understand why it hurts so much, I said. Show me what to do with this truth. I didn't hear a voice, but I felt that stillness again, the same silence that had embraced me in the kitchen. It was as if God was telling me, keep watching, keep writing. You're finding the way. Watching Daniel wasn't just about him. It was about recovering who I was. And watching Nathan and Chloe was about understanding what I would never accept again. I was no longer the invisible woman in their house. I was Elaine, and I was starting to see myself in the silence of my apartment, with the hum of the heater as my only companion. I realized that waiting for justice was like waiting for rain in a desert. I needed to make the rain fall. The house, that weight I had carried for years, was still in my name, a reminder of what I had built with my own hands. It wasn't just bricks and paint. It was my sweat, my sleepless nights balancing numbers. I decided it would no longer belong to those who had made me invisible. It was time to take control. I found Susan, a lawyer with a firm handshake and a look that said she understood women like me. I sat in her office, the desk covered in papers, and explained the situation straightforwardly. The mortgage is paid off. Everything's in my name, I said. I want to sell. She adjusted her glasses, examined the documents I brought, and nodded. You have every right. They have nothing legally. I asked if it seemed petty. Petty is letting those who disrespected you stay in your space. She replied. I signed the papers with a pen that trembled, not with doubt, but with relief. The house would go on the market, and Nathan and Chloe would have to face the world without my foundation. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about setting myself free. But there was more. Chloe, with her shiny Instagram posts, was selling a life that didn't exist. I, who had spent decades sniffing out mistakes in spreadsheets, knew her numbers didn't add up. I hired a financial consultant, Paul, a quiet man who worked with the precision of a surgeon. He dug into Chloe Glows, the coaching brand she flaunted like a trophy. The report he gave me was devastating. Undeclared taxes, fabricated clients, partnerships with brands that were just smoke. The photos from her spiritual retreats, locations rented by the hour, paid with maxed out credit cards. If this leaks, Paul said, she won't recover. I didn't hesitate. I placed the report in an envelope, no return address, and sent it to Chloe's parents, the same ones who had laughed at my table. I wrote a single sentence. The truth shines brighter than any filter. Within days, Chloe's mask cracked. Her Instagram, once a showcase of smiles and mantras, fell silent. The Chloe Glows website crashed with a vague message about updates. A neighbor told me she saw Chloe's mother leaving their house, shouting, her bag swinging against her arm. I didn't smile. I didn't feel pleasure. I felt a balance, as if the universe had straightened a crooked scale. They thought I was fragile, someone to ignore. But I was acting, and each step was proof that I was no longer the shadow they had projected. Selling the house was my right. Exposing Chloe was the truth. And truth, I was learning, had a weight that brought lies down like sandcastles. I was no longer Elaine, fixing other people's chaos. I was Elaine, writing my own story with ink no one could erase. Truth cuts like a blade, not with noise, but with precision. When Chloe's world started to collapse, it was like watching a house of cards fall, one card at a time. The shine of her Instagram posts, full of phrases about abundance, gave way to an emptiness that screamed louder than any filter. I didn't need to see it to know. The life she and Nathan displayed was crumbling, and I was no longer the foundation holding them up. One morning, while stirring my coffee, I heard hesitant knocks at the apartment door. It was Nathan, his eyes sunken, his hair disheveled, his t-shirt looking like it hadn't been washed in 2 days. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking, almost a whisper, not meeting my eyes. "Things are bad. Chloe lost everything, clients, partnerships, her parents." He entered without waiting for an invitation and collapsed onto the couch, his hands covering his face. "They're talking eviction. The house. You can't sell it, Mom. Please." The word "Mom" sounded like a plea, but there was no regret, only fear. I stood still, the warm cup in my hands, and felt a cold calm. It wasn't my job to save him. "You made your choices," I said, my voice firm. "Now live with them." He lifted his head, his eyes wide. "You don't understand. I have nothing." The word "nothing" echoed in the silence. I looked at him, the man I raised, and saw an emptiness where there should have been connection. "You had me," I replied, each syllable heavy. "And you chose to laugh." I walked to the door, opened it, and waited. Nathan stood up, slowly, his shoulders slumped, and left without saying anything more. I closed the door, gently, not out of anger, but by choice. I wasn't abandoning him. I was protecting myself. Beyond my reach, Chloe's fall became public. A local blogger, tired of Chloe's empty promises, posted on Twitter, listing lies, fabricated testimonials, courses never delivered, missing money. Chloe's parents, who had financed part of the illusion, turned their backs. Neighbors saw her packing bags into a rented car, her face hidden by a wide hat. Nathan tried to salvage the image with a post on Instagram, a picture of the two of them with the caption, "Stronger than ever." But the comments were cruel, questions about debt, mocking emojis. The house, already on the market, received a solid offer. The profit would be mine, and I was already dreaming of what I would do with it, perhaps a fund for women who, like me, needed to start over. That night, in the apartment, I opened my notebook and let the pen speak. I wrote about what it meant to say no, about the power of choosing oneself. I looked up and whispered, "God, thank you for teaching me to be steadfast. Guide me to what comes next." I knew I was on the right path. This story isn't about falls or easy victories. It's about me, Elaine, learning to rise, to see myself as more than a reflection of others. The house will be sold, and I haven't yet decided what to do with the money, but I know I want to help women find their voices, just as I found mine. And Daniel, I'm planning how to approach him, a step that still scares me, but one I feel I need to take. Nathan and Chloe, they will reap what they've sown. I move forward, not as the mother they ignored, but as Elaine Carter, the owner of my story, ready to write what comes next. Subscribe, leave your story in the comments. Lift your voice, reignite your story. I'm here to listen, and the world's too.